Hello friends. Every day with us, learn a little more knowledge. Talking about the causes of the conflicts and now the war in Ukraine, there are so many conflicting opinions on both sides that we can't tell the difference. Today we will summarize a rather famous lecture by Professor John Mearsheimer, researcher in political science at the University of Chicago, USA. The analysis from Westerners themselves will help us have a more objective view. The original video everyone can see at the link below the description. During the summary process, we will add more content to suit the current situation, or interpret it in a different way for people to follow. Let's start. First, what did NATO do to make Russia mad? In the early 1990s, the West wanted to tear down the Berlin Wall to help Germany unify and integrate with Europe. However, they had no way of convincing the Soviet Union to abandon East Germany. After much deliberation, they sent U.S. Secretary of State James Baker, along with European leaders, to make a proposal to Gorbachev. Gorbachev will allow Germany to reunify, and NATO will pledge not to expand any more eastward members. Okay. That's a good idea. Soviet leaders signed the Treaty of 2+4, agreeing for East Germany to reunify with West Germany. However, there is a very important note: in the treaty there is no provision that NATO is not allowed to expand to the east, but commitments are only spoken orally. But since then, the Russians have remained convinced that the West has promised and they will deliver. In 1999, for the first time since the Cold War, NATO admitted 3 more members: Poland, Hungary, and the Czech Republic. Russia protested for the first time. In 2004, NATO continued to expand by 7 more members in Eastern Europe: Slovenia, Slovakia, Bulgaria, Romania, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. Russia protested a second time. However, because the 3 Baltic states are so small and the other countries are not close to the border, they still accept to live with potential dangers. Every time NATO has 1 more member, it means Russia has an extra gun pointed at its head. Then in 2008, NATO issued a statement at the Bucharest summit. We welcome Georgia's request to join the organization. Russia immediately reacted harshly. Georgia and Ukraine cannot join NATO because it will directly threaten our security. If you do it intentionally, it will lead to serious consequences for the whole of Europe. As for Georgia, they, like today's Ukraine, wanted to leave Russia, and as a result were beaten and bruised in just a week. So during the expansion, what did NATO do wrong? There's nothing wrong with their stance, but it touches on Russian taboos. This is similar to the United States, which considers the Monroe Doctrine to be extremely important. Accordingly, any outside force is not allowed to set up military bases in the Western Hemisphere, that is, the entire Americas. That is why the United States got mad when the Soviet Union installed a missile system in Cuba in 1962. In the opposite position, Russia also took a similar position, not allowing the enemy to place missiles on his doorstep. Specifically in Ukraine. Now, we will continue to talk about the United States, one of their famous foreign policies. It's about promoting democracy around the world. By definition, democracy is a political system in which all state power belongs to the people. Along with that is the recognition of the principles of equality, freedom, and human rights. Sounds great, but what does promoting democracy mean? That is, the United States wants to abolish the regime in countries it considers undemocratic, and replace it with a new pro-Western regime. Standing as a superpower benefits them in many ways. There are more allies to strengthen global power, as well as more business partners and product consumption markets. They do it purely for the national interest, not for the sake of ethics. In politics, we should not think of this phrase, ethics. Therefore, the United States has carried out color revolutions in dozens of countries around the world, including Ukraine in 2004. Basically, the process goes like this: find the opposition in that country, provide them with financial resources and intelligence on inside the government. Then, use the media to spread propaganda against the government, and praise the good benefits of integrating with the West. Finally, it is to mobilize the masses to initiate political protests and wait for the collapse of the host government. This practice is extremely effective in countries with deep internal divisions. For a united people will not be easy. Let's take a look at the Ukraine case. The people of the East, largely Eastern Orthodox, have close economic, linguistic and cultural ties to Russia. In the West, the people speak the Ukrainian language, following the Roman religion that is historically associated with Europe. Those in the middle of the country took a neutral position. From there, led to the formation of two opposing political factions, East and West. Whichever side can attract the neutrals, that faction holds the power. In 2004, the United States took advantage of the differences between East and West Ukraine to launch an Orange Revolution that made the country more deeply divided politically. They succeeded in supporting the pro-Western faction, led by Yushchenko, to reverse the results of the previous election won by pro-Russian Yanukovych. During the 6 years that Yushchenko took power, Ukraine's economy grew by an average of 1.67%, much lower than in the same period before at 6.85%. Thus, Ukraine's first pro-Western leader was not trusted. In 2010, Yushchenko was defeated in a fair election against his previous opponent, Yanukovych. However, with this president in charge, the economy in Ukraine is even worse. Leads to the dissatisfaction of the majority of the people. In 2013, Yanukovych refused to sign an agreement with the EU on economic integration and political integration with Europe. The reason, because President Putin objected. The terms of the agreement, he said, would make Ukraine lean more towards the West. Therefore, he made many favorable incentives for Ukraine. Of which, there is a grant of $15 billion. In general, the conditions offered by Russia are much better than the agreement proposed by the EU. However, the Western partisan still disagree. They incited people to stand up to protest because they were angry with the bad economic situation, and the people responded enthusiastically. It wouldn't be worth talking about without the support from the West. The original intention of the people was to protest against not signing a deal with the EU, but then it turned to overthrow the pro-Russian government. Not only that, it is pushed to a whole new level. They toppled the statue of Lenin, and wanted to completely destroy the historical legacies related to the Soviet Union. Realizing that the situation was not good, Putin made a decision to annex Crimea to avoid losing a strategic position in the Black Sea to the west. At the same time, pro-Russian residents in the Donbass region also rebelled to secede from Ukraine, leading to a protracted civil war. By 2014, the Western Party had succeeded in a coup d'état to oust President Yanukovych and replace him with Poroshenko. As soon as he came to power, he carried out a purge of pro-Russian politicians, and led the country towards the West. A series of events followed, causing Ukraine to move further and further away from Russia. They restrict most Russian-speaking TV channels. Block Russian social networks. Establishment of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, to separate the people from the Moscow Patriarchate. Sign an economic and political association agreement with the EU. Push the West to allow NATO membership and militarize its armed forces against Russia if forced. All of that makes Russia stand still. On the one hand, they support the separatist government in the Donbass region to fight. On the other hand, they repeatedly threatened to attack Ukraine. The country did not return to the same trajectory. In 2019, Zelensky was elected president and Russia hopes he will not continue the path of his predecessor. But no, the new president also raised many challenges with the limits of Putin's tolerance. Zelensky launched repressions and introduced severe sanctions against the separatists in the Donbass region, an event Russia calls genocide. At the same time, completely ban Russian-speaking TV channels. At the climax, Zelensky launched the occupation of Crimea campaign, aimed at driving Russia out of this area. During Zelensky's leadership, President Putin has repeatedly issued warnings. However, the more he warned, the more resolute he acted to fully integrate with the West. So you choose death. Those are all the main events leading up to today's war. Video ends here. Thank you all for watching and liking it. If you find the video useful, please give us a like and subscribe to the channel to support us. Goodbye and see you again.